Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. As you know, we've been talking about workforce for the last several weeks, and boy, has it been an interesting conversation. We've learned quite a few things, but as a nation, we're feeling the pain of the great resignation. For many organizations, this has led to innovative practices. And for others, it has left leaders wondering, where did everybody go? And yet, the great resignation has also given us an opportunity to shed some light on what others are doing. True innovation. So join us as we continue the conversation of innovation in the workplace. Welcome. Hi, this is Cynthia. Hi, I'm Cynthia Rojas from Coffee Time with Masterminds, and I am writing solo as my co hosts are on vacation and away. But I want to welcome all of our listeners across the country and also to our viewers. Our listeners in Australia, welcome, and our viewers in the US and across the world, let us know if you're listening and where from, because we always want to hear from you. And today we have two special guests. Alden Woodcock and Ra Hashin are the executive director and supervisor and mentor to Emerge Connecticut. And Emerge Connecticut is an interesting organization. It works with individuals re-entering from our criminal justice system, and not only does it provide support and training, but Emerge also has a social enterprise that allows it to walk the walk and talk the talk, or not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. Whatever the metaphor is, Emerge is doing it. And I am excited to welcome both Alden and Raj. How are you guys?
Hi, Cynthia.
I'm good. How you
Doing
doing?
good.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I'm so excited to have you guys on. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Part of this excitement is that, as you know, workforce is has always been an issue, but boy, has it exploded ever since COVID and the post-pandemic, or I don't even know if I can call it that because we're still in the pandemic. But after we had to decide whether we're going to go back to work, do a hybrid, or work from home, there has been an enormous amount of individuals resigning. And leaders are asking, where did these individuals go? Where are they? But we also know that there are nonprofits that are doing really interesting stuff to keep and retain their workers, but also train the next generation of our workforce. So tell me a little bit about Emerge.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cynthia. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
so as you said, Emerge is a social enterprise. And, we are a nonprofit social enterprise, and the type of social enterprise we run is an employment social enterprise. So basically, what that means is we're a nonprofit organization with a social mission, but we're also a small business. Our business is construction. We do construction, landscaping, property maintenance. We have contracts all over the city of New Haven where we operate. And that status gives us the unique ability to hire people that are coming home from the criminal justice system as crew members. So, unlike most workforce development organizations, quote unquote, we're actually an employer ourselves. So, we're able to meet that immediate need of employment when you come home, while we also try to do the more important work, which I consider, the actual social mission, the healing that really happens when you first get home in this space. So everybody comes home from incarceration, and there's a lot of pressure on us in America in general to be able to provide, especially toxic masculinity, all these things. We deal with mostly men here. There's this pressure that we put on ourselves to be the provider, and so we're able to meet that immediate need. And people are able to learn new skills in a trade that is, historically very forgiving to people with criminal records, construction. So you're able to learn a trade, make some money, but we really leverage that opportunity to put people on payroll as a way to get people to pause. And one
I
of the
like
things
that.
that we don't encourage people coming home from the criminal justice system to do is really start that healing process and really start to build a foundation when you first come home. Because if you go straight from prison to working a 40-hour work week, it's just not that simple. A job is not enough to keep somebody from falling back into the pitfalls of parole violations, pressures, societal pressures, and just that adjustment that needs to happen mentally, emotionally, socially, um, beyond just employment. Employment is just one important piece of coming home from incarceration, but we find that the mental, emotional, and social aspects of it are what people stumble on, and that's what we find ourselves very, well set up to address
I
for
like
folks who.
that. I like that. I like, you said a couple of things, but I'm interested also. Ra, you are both a supervisor and a mentor. And I'm going to imagine that for some of these individuals, they just came out of a system that was probably very structured, right? And they're coming in and there's a lot happening, right? They're reintegrating to their family, they're reintegrating to a different society. And depending how long they've been away, things are changing so fast. And so what are you finding are the needs? And I think it's interesting that you're both supervisor and mentor. What are you seeing are the needs that these individuals have coming into Emerge? And what's the importance of mentorship?
Um, it's very important. I feel like the mentorship because they getting they getting the benefits of having somebody who's been through it, and they get the benefits of having somebody that's not been through but still navigating to get to a better situation. Because a lot of time when brothers and sisters come home, we just lost. We're trying to not really catch up. We're just trying to be established. Or we're just trying to be in a situation where we can function out here. And then a lot of times, you're dealing with pride, and you're just dealing with the fact that before you got locked up, you was providing, you was leading the way, and now you got to go to a back seat. So that's not always a good thing to process by yourself. So just having a support system, just having a family outside of your own family that understands. Of course, your family want to be there and they love you, but sometimes they don't know how to express the help. They sometimes don't know how to, really know what to do to help you navigate. They're just trying to make sure you got a job. Or they're trying to just make
Yeah.
sure you don't go back to prison. They're not really trying to make sure you're building a foundation to succeed, to survive out here. So that's kind of the great thing about the mentorship.
I love this. I love this. And yes, I think it's important. We had someone on the show just talk about mentoring, and he talked about how companies do not take advantage of the power of mentoring. And I love when you said having to, being with someone that's been through it themselves is really, really valuable. And we have to watch ourselves because, we come in thinking we're going to save the world. And yet, if we've never really experienced it, we don't know that pain. So thank you for that. Alton, you used the word healing about 4 times. And I want to tap into that because it's obviously a big deal. And it also goes into our next conversation, which I was hoping we would have, is what are the unique challenges of the reentry population. But if you could talk also about healing and what that means, that would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. This is the thing. I mean, for most people, like when I was 10 years ago, maybe I never heard of the word self care, and I think in personal development and things like emotional intelligence and things like that. And I think for people that have been in systems, especially, mental health and mental wellness and self care have been stigmatized, right? If I've been in the school system and I'm misbehaving, I'm sent to a counselor, right, as a punishment, or it might feel like a punishment to me. When I'm in the DCF system or I'm in the criminal justice system, I'm forced to see a counselor. I'm forced to, in the criminal justice system, I'm forced to take medication. I'm forced to see a counselor. So when I come home, the last thing I want is someone to tell me to go see a therapist, right?
Love that.
That has not worked for me. But for me personally, Alden, I haven't been in the criminal justice system, and I have engaged in therapy on my personal, by my personal choice. I've had agency in that decision. I've been in the driver's seat of that journey. It's been a tool that I can use for my own healing and my own mental health, right? And what we try to do at Emerge is just destigmatize mental health, right? Because there's been this connotation to mental health that's been punitive, right? So we're trying to flip that on its head and give people agency and make sure that people know that their healing and their mental health is something that, the same way you go to the gym and you work out your muscles and you get in tune with your body, you should be able to develop a practice that works for you. See a therapist that maybe looks like you and has been through things that you've been through, and can help you through a lot of these things. And in the same vein, mentorship is incredibly important, that lived experience. So having a network of mentors, peers, therapists, building that support system so that you have a healthy network to support you through these, challenges that are inevitably going to happen. Just because you just decided to start working and doing the right thing doesn't mean you're not going to lose family members again. Doesn't mean you're not going to face
Right.
tragedy. Doesn't mean you're not going to have anxiety. Doesn't mean you're not going to be plagued with depression. So you have to be able to develop more than one tool in your tool belt to be able to go at those different challenges that will inevitably come your way. So we're very much trying to prepare people by equipping them with that healthy place where you can sort of start that process.
I love that. I love that. But I have to ask, and Ra, you're more on the ground, right? So I'm going to imagine, just based on my lived experience, right, and belonging to a Latino culture, I remember when I told my mom I was seeing a therapist, and she said, "Well, you're not gonna tell them everything, right?" And so the idea that I was airing our dirty laundry. First of all, she didn't think I needed a therapist, right? That I had this perfect life, and so that there's no need for processing. And if you need to process, then you do that inside the house and you shut the door. You don't tell anybody. So I'm gonna and yet I am a woman, and so we in general are allowed to show our emotions. I'm going to imagine that for some of the men that could be challenging, or maybe even the first time they're hearing about that, and they may belong to a culture that doesn't really appreciate that sort of processing. And so are guys shocked when they come to Emerge and they're like, what, you want me to talk about what happened to me when I was 6? I don't think so. What are you finding, Rod?
Yeah, it can be. They can have their guard up, which is respectful, and they should have their guard up. But I think
Mm.
we lay out our intentions, and I think when they come in contact with us, they see these intentions being established. So the guard that they did have, it starts to come down. And then the thing about healing, like the brother was saying earlier, everybody deserves that. But everybody don't really go after it because they suppress certain things. Like you were saying earlier, they suppress feelings. They suppress emotions because they don't want to get embarrassed or feel, they did something wrong. They don't want to forgive themselves. But I always feel like everything that we go through, everything happens for a reason. And part of that is going through a process of understanding that and seeking healing. So we just
Yeah.
kind of always encourage that with the brothers and sisters that come in here. Like just basically give yourself a second chance. Give yourself a chance to really find out the root issue and understanding and balance. Because when you have balance, you have healing. Like the brother was saying earlier, you're going through these situations, it ain't gonna stop. But now
Right.
you just have more of awareness of it. You're more in the moment instead of running away and suppressing it. Now you're trying to figure out what's going on so you keep navigating. So we just kind of
I I love that. And I wonder, has anyone ever succeeded without the healing part in your program?
um. Oh, you would go. You would go.
Alden is smiling. Uh-oh.
I can't say I have. I don't
Oh
know.
wow.
I don't know, you know, they could just tell me one thing, could do something else. But just for me, in my experience, I can't say that. That's why I say,
Wow.
it is the thing about suppressing things. It is, it just stays in. It stays in to the point you explode. And then when you explode and that cup is just overflowing, it's on the ground. Now it's a disaster, and it could have been avoided. And now you just keep going down this spiral of this crashing and crashing when you can just sit back and really just tap in and just
Mm.
seek a better life. Just seek another way. You know this way, but let's just try this way for the better good.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. I love that. Alden, you were smiling.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I think that's like I think that's for everybody, right? I mean, our
Yeah.
our ability to achieve our potential and what we feel like, what we know we're capable of, or what other people see us to be capable of that we might not see in ourselves, hinges entirely on our ability to, heal and adjust. And I think the thing that's interesting, and my board chair, Don Sawyer, would say, people always say that people coming home need a second chance. But when I start to hear these stories, I realize that most of the guys that come through here haven't had a first chance, right?
I
So a
love
lot
that.
of people are just starting from the very beginning in terms of like, I've never had a place where I felt comfortable talking about some of this stuff. I didn't know I had anxiety. I didn't even know what
Right.
that was. Like, and just, starting to have that space to kind of map out these issues and start to see that maybe I'm not the only one going through it. Like that right there is healing. So I would say that nobody, oh, sorry, the sensor on the link, but nobody has gone through this program without healing unless they didn't stay long enough to really experience that, because that's what you're faced with when you come here. You're faced with a mirror. You're faced with other people that you respect and that have been through what you've been through, being vulnerable, and it's seen as a sign of strength, right? So now I'm like, oh, I got to start to get comfortable with opening up a little bit. And once you see that start to happen, it's almost like you get kind of addicted to it. It's like, wow, like I kind of
Yeah.
crave that agency, that freedom.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, nobody here has gone through this without some level of healing. Obviously, it's different for everybody, but I think that's crucial, especially after a traumatic life event like incarceration.
Wow. And so I wonder, in the world of workforce, right? Here are a group of individuals wanting to change their lives, wanting a first or even a second chance. And I love that, Alden, that some of them never even got a first chance, wanting to put the past behind them and really start again. And yet, there are challenges. There are real barriers that, as a country, we impose of our individuals that are coming back home. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I'm not sure we all understand what's it like to have gone to prison and then come out and have all these barriers. Can you and Rod talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Rod, if you want to just expand on it a little bit. But the main thing that people see as a barrier when they're coming home is employment. I mean, just having, even if someone was open to hiring someone with a criminal record, like having them gaps on your resume, not having work experience, not having qualifications, all those things come into play. And it not only, you're going to get no's when you're looking for a job, whether you've been incarcerated or not, but a lot of those no's really feed into a narrative that people have of themselves, that they're not worthy, or they're not you know they're not a part of that world, right? So they're not accepted in the world of the workforce. They're not accepted in mainstream society. So, when they get that no, it's way more triggering than a no that I would get from a job. And so there are many employers that will not hire people, especially with certain charges on their record, and it becomes something that you face for the rest of your life until you're able to get your record expunged and build up some work experience and stuff like that. And there are pieces of legislation like Clean Slate that are starting to help with that, but even that's for like only nonviolent offenses. So some people stick could make a simple mistake and end up with this tag on them for the rest of their lives. Some of the more unknown or not as well known things, as you mentioned, Cynthia, before the call, you know, people are, getting their licenses again. So you have to go through a lot of hoops to get your license. We had one guy who paid his restitution, paid a restoration fee, paid for his permit, did all this stuff, went through all the hoops, and now he's failed his driver's test twice over the most stupid little things. And it's like, driving too slow on an icy road, or, you know, glancing at your backup cam after glancing at all your mirrors when you're backing up, right? And those are two reasons that someone just failed a test, like in the past couple of weeks. So it just becomes and this guy's got to get to work. So the temptation is for him to use his car to just go to work. But
Right.
then driving without a license, that's a violation of your parole. Now you're back in jail. Whereas me or you, Cynthia, we drive without a license, we got to go to court, pay a fee. We're not
Yep.
getting sent to jail for that, right? So it's just your margin for error is so low. I'd say one of the biggest things, Cynthia, if I'm being totally honest, is housing, right?
Oh.
So it's really hard to get housing. A lot of people come home to families who are living in Section 8, say, for instance, right? So living in subsidized housing. If I have a criminal record, I'm not allowed to live with them. So now I can't go live with my wife and kids. Of course, I'm going to want to go there. Of course, I'm going to go visit there. Of course, I'm going to go stay there. But if I get caught, I'm getting violated, right? So now I'm looking for housing just to have an address for parole or whatever, but I'm not really living there. So now I'm paying rent, they're paying rent, and it's hard to make ends meet. What
Wow.
also
And
ends up
and you're a
happening,
family, so the family is being divided.
yes, and
I
then what
did not
also
know
happens
that.
is if I can't find a place to live, one of the most common things I'm going to do is I'm going to get into a relationship just
Right.
so I have a place to live. So instead of we met, we're dating, we fell in love, we want to move in together, stuff like that. It's like we met, we moved in together, right? Because it's a necessity, right? I need a place to live, right? So
Yeah.
now you in this dysfunctional kind of power dynamic where your ability to get along hinges on your ability to have a place to live, right? Because if I call your PO, I call the police, that's a violation, you're going back to jail, right?
Wow.
Even over the pettiest argument, right? So all of these things are sort of the unseen little details that it's so easy to fall back into the system when you come home, even if you are trying to do the right thing, right? So,
Yeah.
and then you
This
mentioned
is
child
complicated.
support, right? When someone goes on payroll at Emerge, I get a bill, and I'm told to garnish their wages. Now, I will say, compared to when my predecessor Dan Husino was in charge, the 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 ask is much lower. It's much more reasonable. It's much more based on their income, but it's still a huge barrier. And it's something that makes it really hard when you're working part time and half of your check is getting garnished by child support. It it disincentivizes working legitimately, right? Where you
Yeah.
want to go get money off the book somewhere, and that doesn't really help either. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of little insidious things that come into play when you're making that transition.
Yeah, and Ra, I have to tell you, as supervisor and mentor, I am already overwhelmed just hearing about all the challenges, right? And I can't imagine what it is to come out and be, many times we're happy to come out, right? And yet I didn't know about the Section 8. So the idea that I might have to lose my family and not be able to reintegrate because of that law. And then the idea, I love Alden when he said, normally we meet somebody, we like them, we date. Some of us date longer than others, but we're checking the hood under the car. And here we're just buying the car and we're driving away. And so, wow. And how do you begin to unpack this for individuals that are just coming back home? Where do you go? Where do you begin, Ra?
I just always try to be an ear. You know, I just always try to be a listening support. A lot of times you don't have nobody to talk to. And then it's a scary situation when you come home because, you think that, this is behind you now. You got a clean slate. You didn't pay your debt. You think it's going to be on a fair base because you did what you had to do, but it's just as hard. And then it's like, it goes on your mental now. So it's kind of like a warfare every time you go look for these jobs. Anytime I remember I got a job, well, I thought I had a job at Amazon. I did everything, I took my picture and everything, just to know that they want nothing to do with me because of my background. And then there's certain jobs forcing you, telling you that they're one way, friendly, just to tell you that they can't hire you because of your background. Then you're trying to, like you said, be the family man because you've been gone for all these years, and but you want to make it count now because you're in a better place, but you're
Yeah.
constantly in the mind of your old place, and you're
Yeah.
constantly trying to find jobs and you can't get jobs. So it makes sense to go back to your old place
Right.
because you don't want to go back to prison. You don't want
Right.
to be broke, and then everybody around you is telling you, you better get some money, you better get a job, you better, so they're saying everything, but really what you need, kind of need, like the mental game that you need, and it's that armor and the tools that you need to develop. So I always try to be an ear to these brothers and these sisters. I try to be an ear. I don't really tell them what to do, but I compare and contrast about, what I went through. Or I'd be like, well, I think, you should look into this, or I think you should be open-minded to this. Because I
Yeah.
remember, da 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 da. So just trying to be a support system in the ear.
That's awesome. And so we have about 3 minutes left, and I definitely want to tap into your success. Like, what kind of outcomes does Emerge have? I mean, you are obviously a front runner in New Haven, Connecticut. I see your name. I see articles written about you. You guys are always in the paper. You have your local foundation is a huge supporter of your work. Tell me, I mean, so you're obviously rocking it. Tell me about your outcomes. Tell me your success.
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me is not about employment and stuff like that. I think employment is a symptom of some of the other work that's being done. And so the most important thing to me is that people, one, stay alive, and two, stay out of prison, right? So we have an 11% 2 year recidivism rate all time. That's since inception in 2011. But if you look at any given cohort, it's normally, especially over the past few years, it's well below 10%, even sometimes below 5% on any given year for recidivism. So a vast majority of the people that come through this program are able to stay out of prison, which is the main thing that we're focused on. We build long-term relationships with people. We continue to stay in touch with them as they stumble, as they fall, as they make mistakes. We're there, like Ross said, to lend that ear and to be that support. Um, we have people that go to work. About 85% of them are working a year later. So that's a huge point of pride for us as
Nice.
well. Um, and there are a number of other metrics, but what's really important to us is long-term success. I think a lot of employment, workforce development organizations feel pressure from funders to get those placement numbers, and they get them, but how long are they working there after, right? Are they working,
Right.
are they still working there 3, 6, 1 year, 2 years later? And you're starting to see a lot more workforce agencies utilize those longer term metrics. And that's what's really important because we can rapid attachment, to the workforce all day. But are we really providing an equitable, supportive, approach that's responsive to the unique challenges on why people aren't working in the first place, right? I could hook somebody up with a job right away when they come home, but if I'm not being realistic about the challenges they're facing outside of work, that's not going
Yeah.
to last. So that's the important thing to us, and that's what we kind of pride ourselves on.
Wow, that's great. Ra, I want to end with you, and I wonder what are employers missing out on? Why should those who are not hiring because of past records, what is it that they need to know? Because they're obviously missing out on a workforce that is willing and eager to work.
I feel like everybody deserves a second chance. I don't really see the need for the box. I don't really see the need of, depending on the situation, constantly have to explain yourself when you go to these jobs. Because I know over my second job, I got the job, but I remember I had to come in. I supposed to get interviewed once, but I ended up getting interviewed 4 times. So I had to come in 3 other times just to constantly explain, where I'm at right now, what my charge is right now, and how it's no problem right now. So I think just taking the time to this, they do analytics, they do research off of the businesses all the time. Forbes do it, entrepreneur do it. I think the company look into the fellas and look into just the like all the ones saying the high rate of people not going back. Just do your research.
Right,
We're at a different time. More information is being provided, so we shouldn't be moving still on the old model. Okay, these brothers and sisters coming home, they deserve a chance. You're saying that you can't get nobody to work for you. Let's try this route. So this
right.
taking time to understand.
I love that. I love
Mind.
that. All right, guys. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. And I have to tell you, I may bring you back because one of the other topics that we've been wanting to tap into is mental health in the workplace. And that is definitely new for many organizations that are having to deal with what they learned in during the pandemic is that we really saw a surge in mental health, and for some people that issue was always there. We just got to see it more. So definitely want to have a conversation about that. And I want to thank our viewers for watching and for our listeners for listening. And we'll see you next Friday. Don't go away.